Welcome everybody back. Episode 6 of the Lake Breakers podcast. I know we did have 1 week break from the podcast, but we are back. We had the USA Grand Prix or Texas. I like to call it the Circuit of America's COTA Grand Prix. It's such a fun race. I find it very enjoyable as a track overall to just race around and see some of the racing there. And I think this race it actually brought quite a bit of excitement there, as well as some drama along the ways. But alongside me to talk about all this excitement and drama, I have Nash returning again. How you doing, man?
I am doing great yourself. After such a great weekend, man. I mean, geez, that's one of the best races I've seen in a while.
I have to agree. I have to agree. So let's kick it off immediately. We had sprint weekend format for
Yes,
this
we did.
weekend, right? Which is really fun. Right, we've gotten different formats for the sprint race weekend, and if you guys were on the Twitch stream there, I was saying uh, a potential thing that they should try at least to do is a one-shot qualifying, because if we look at it carefully, the in SQ3, is that what it's called, sprint shootout? I don't know.
Shootout one.
Shootout.
The shootout one,
No,
shootout two. Let's call it
yeah,
that for simplicity.
simplicity. Shootout 3, right? We had half of the 5 drivers basically. Well, no, actually not half. Everyone did only one lap around COTA. That was what happened. We had only 8 minutes to do a lap, and it just ended up being a one-shot qualifying. And those who were at the started last or left the pits last had the best chance for putting it on pole. Although Max still won it with just that early lap that he did, not race.
Well, until that lap got deleted, and then track limits got changed for actual race day. So little little things like that
No, that's
that
the
the
opposite.
FIA.
See, that
Go
for me,
ahead.
that's the opposite of what I was saying. I'm talking about the sprint shootout. That was qualifying, which was on
Hmm.
Friday, where Max's
Hmm.
lap got deleted. Just talking about sprint shootout specifically, I want to
All
start
right.
there with the
Yes,
sprint
yes.
because
My
that's the first
apologies.
that's the first event we
Yeah.
really had.
Yes, that's the first thing we're tackling. All right, cool.
So we, I think it was pretty fun. But like I said, in that shootout 3, it was a one lap one shot quali, and it just doesn't look like the traditional one shot quali or have the traditional one shot quali name to it, right? But it's bringing some interesting things to here. Maybe they needed to change the mandatory tires. I don't know. I feel like using Q1 and Q2 both for mediums, and then only Q3 you could use softs, was a bit of a interesting thing. We saw someone like where is the boy, the man, the myth, the legend who ended up having to retire, Oscar Piastri. He was struggling on the mediums, and Lando was struggling on the mediums in Q1
Well,
and
and not
Q2.
to mention Fernando Alonso.
Mm, you're right.
Well, Fernando Alonso is a completely different situation.
Yeah,
So, which we'll get onto for sprint and race.
right.
But just for a brief overview, he had to change the chassis of his car and go back to the guitar spec because it just felt undrivable. If you actually compare the lap times from last year's car to this year's car, as in Lance Stroll's lap times, they're actually like 7/10 slower. And being that much slower in a car that's supposed to be quicker is really not a good thing for Aston Martin. That car's really gone backwards lately, and it seems like the upgrade packages they've brought haven't done what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, it definitely did look like that. I mean, it left some Fernando Alonso in 12th, as well as Lance Stroll only in 14th for the sprint shootout, which is that was
Mhm.
incredibly frustrating for the drivers to say the least. But let's quickly go through also the the grid order for that for the sprint race. We had P20 Logan Sargent, 19 Yuki Tsunoda, 18 Valtteri Bottas, 17 Kevin Magnussen, 16 Nico Hulkenberg, 15 Guan Yu Zhou, 14 Lance Stroll, P13 Esteban Ocon, P12 Fernando Alonso, P11 Danny Rick, which is beautiful. We'll come to Danny Rick when it's his turn. P10 Pierre Gasly, P9 Alex Albon, P8 George Russell, P7 Sergio Perez, P6 Carlos Sainz, P5 Oscar Piastri, P4 Lando Norris, P3 Lewis Hamilton, P2 Charles Leclerc, and P1 Max Verstappen. And that was, I think it was a very interesting qualifying. The overall track evolution around COTA was insane actually. And for COTA not having any support races for F1 here, I believe previously we've had like the Porsche Cup at least follow F1 to COTA where we get to see that.
Well, technically they had the F1 Academy as on track, so there was a bit of warm up, and you did speak on it in the actual stream where there were actually some good races. There's some good moves that they're making, and since the cars are, I believe, Formula 4 spec, they should be able to transition into Formula 4, and hopefully we'll see one or two of them actually competing in Formula 4 next season. And maybe they do another season in Formula Academy, just to get used to the acclimating to that sort of pace of cars and the media and the everything around it. Then maybe then move on. So in terms of support race, it did give that sort of support. And in terms of track evolution, you're absolutely right. It was absolutely barnstorming towards the end of the actual qualification sessions. We saw a lot of really fast qualification times. We saw Nico Hulkenberg at the top of quali at one point, because of the evolution of the track and the consistency of that evolution. But as we see, he wasn't able to put it together when it actually counted, because of, again, that track evolution.
Yeah, it's really crazy because I mean, if we're just looking at the times here, let's use Max Verstappen as an example. Man is the fastest man on track right now. In Q1 for the sprint shootout, he did a 1:35.9, right? The next outing, the fastest lap he managed to put out was a 1:35.1, right? It's only 7/10 there, right? But then to gain something like well over 7/10 within the next lap that he essentially did in the shootout 3, and he's only 2/10 slower than Carlos's qualifying time of last year around COTA, which is a 1:34.3, right? So I think if Formula Academy had a bit more laps to do, so they only had 8 laps to do in that racing, which was very exciting. If I really hope you guys can have a look at Formula Academy, because it was exciting. I mean, we had a battle there that was like for P8, 3 cars fighting for P8. It was a great battle. But we here for F1 right now, and if there was a supporting race here, I think these times would have been more consistent with each other, and it could have been incredibly fast, right? And it is really good. So let's move on to the straight, right? Onto the actual straight. COTA does have a long straight, but the actual sprint, right? We have the grid orders, everything. Max Verstappen, I mean, he did end up winning that race. But let's start from last place right now. Lance Stroll suffering a suspension failure on his car, which led him to retiring the car on lap 16. Unfortunate.
It's yet again Aston Martin doing a bad job when it comes to the actual reliability and the build quality, because it seems like everything isn't going the way it should be. And it sort of correlates to the fact that they've lost development time in the wind tunnel, because the times are reset. So it's really not looking good for them. And at this point, because of the consistency of McLaren, they're going to get caught. And from going from being second to potentially ending in sixth is really not good
Yeah.
in terms of the constructors championship.
And I mean, they just lost their position to McLaren this weekend. McLaren now is ahead of them in the constructors, which is just unfortunate. And I think this plays into their development strategy. I don't think they have enough meaningfully big packages to come throughout the year, right? Where we see someone like a team like Haas, right? They only bring quite a few big packages, and the minor packages that they bring along are so minor it looks almost insignificant in terms of what they've been able to achieve, right? So for them to suffer a suspension failure on Lance's car when Lance didn't even get a much of a he didn't get into any form of contact. The first lap was pretty clean from everybody. So I think maybe a mechanic left a screw loose when they were working on the car, setting it up for things, which led to that suspension failure. It truly is unfortunate. Let's see, Logan Sargent, right? He is in P19. This was a typical Logan Sargent sprint or even race weekend for him, where he's just far at the back, nothing much. I did see he did try to have some battles with Kevin Magnussen. He managed to keep himself within Kevin Magnussen's DRS for quite a few laps, but he's
I mean,
lacking
he
the
still
space.
finished within Kevin's DRS, which is good.
Mm.
Shows he's maybe able to get a little bit of a handle on the car, but he's got 5 races left in order to prove himself. He really does. It's trial by fire right now because the first half of the not even first half, the first 3 quarters of the season have come and gone, and he hasn't been particularly impressive.
Mm. Agreed. I think it only took up to COTA for him to start to show something and other circumstances to help him out.
Mm-hmm.
So I
100%
think
agree.
the one thing is good. We can't always give him so much flack. Is he didn't manage to crash the car this weekend, right? Which that's a good point, and he didn't even really go off that much, spinning the car at all. So he managed to keep the car in one piece and bring it home smoothly. Within racing conditions. I mean, he's in Kevin's DRS, so that I consider that some racing conditions there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, let's give him a little bit of plaudits there for not crashing, but that's a really tough marker because then you're sitting there and you're every race kind of expecting it, and that's not you shouldn't be expecting that from 20 of the best drivers in the world.
No, definitely. And if you're one of the best drivers in the world, you shouldn't be crashing your car like this.
That regularly.
Yeah, that rig. We do see some crashes from the top performing drivers every now and then. People they still are people. They can make mistakes, but someone who looked like he couldn't make a mistake earlier on was Kevin Magnussen. But I think that was down to the track evolution, which made him look incredibly fast around COTA. I was really shocked, but he was really putting in some laps there for himself, and he ended up just losing a position to Valtteri Bottas, to fall down to P18. I just think he's not looking like he's won with the car. Nico has a better grasp of the car, and at the moment it looks like he's failing rule number one. Beat your teammate.
Mm-hmm.
And
Which is it's a little shocking for me because when you look at it comparatively to last year, when he was clearly driving the wheels off of that car, putting it in. I mean, you look at the Brazil performance, you look at his performance and consistency throughout the season, even with the minimal upgrades they had. He looked really good last season, and then this season he's just taken a complete 180, and he's looking like the average Kevin that goes anonymous a few times in races as he has. And it's unfortunate because last season we saw a revitalized Kevin Magnussen, and unfortunately it seems like that year out gives you that energy and vim, and it seems like that's happened to Nico now, and he's got that energy and vim to go forward. But I don't know how consistent that will be because the car's not developing, it's not upgrading, they're not moving it forward. And to bring one upgrade in like 8 races or 5 or 6 races isn't competitive enough, you know?
I 100% agree. And the thing is, they even got a big package this weekend with their Red Bull esque style design of the car. But like I said on the stream, if you look at it, Sam Collins pointed it out. That car looks a lot more like the Aston Martin and a bit more like a Ferrari than the Red Bull. Although, at least from the top down, Ferrari went with that almost bucket style design, and Haas
Mm-hmm.
still have quite a big element of that included. But I think maybe the main focus that they had was coming up with a new floor, potentially for themselves, so that they can just get some more downforce going for that car. And I think they need to focus on something. Like, do they want to be faster in low speed, medium speed, or high speed corners? We know with Williams, we know on the high
Yes.
speed, that car has like almost no drag compared to everyone else's cars.
Mm-hmm.
So on tracks like Spa, COTA, we can expect the Williams to perform a little bit better because you want to run a low drag and low downforce spec wing and front and rear wing, so you'll get that performance. But Haas seems to not have an identity. They need to really form some form of identity, and I think Kevin and Nico need to help them create this form of identity at where they want to put the focus on, because they really looked quite competitive, or at least Nico did at the start of the year. We're putting that P6 into at Bahrain, but then race pace is something else. Onto
Yeah, that's the truth.
onto the two
And
silent
then
assassins, right? P17 Guan Yu Zhou, P16
mhm,
Valtteri Bottas. Well, that's again like it's a very quiet race
the
between these
quiet
two
alphas
guys.
or
The,
the silent Saubers.
the silent Saubers, they're waiting for that Audi. If you listen carefully, you might just hear Audi when we say silent Saubers. I don't know where you'll
Mm-hmm.
hear Audi, but it's there
Yep.
looming in the background, waiting for something
Yes,
to.
definitely.
Um, there we did see Alfa Romeo instructed Joe to swap positions with Valtteri Bottas, and rightfully so. I mean, Bottas managed to gain 3 seconds on Joe after they swapped positions. So it's Valtteri managed to gain some pace, but I don't think he had enough to catch Nico.
And
And
in all honesty, they should have swapped back, but it doesn't do anything for standings because no one got any points. But generally, they should have swapped back if it was a team order to swap. But moving on to P15, Nico Hulkenberg, who we have been talking about in terms of Haas. I mean, it's a little unfortunate that their quali pace early on didn't really progress into faster quali lap times and actually show actual real pace. Yeah, Nico had an a really ebbing and flowing weekend. He had that moment of elation when he put it in P1 during quali, and then it magically evaporating due to track evolution, and then having a really lackluster Saturday when he had the shoot. I mean, later on the Saturday evening, essentially, or Saturday afternoon, essentially, having a really mediocre race because his sprint time wasn't too competitive. He was more than 6 seconds off Yuki, so not really competitive this weekend.
not only that, for me, it's more like if you look at the overall lap times, right? It's all this time that you see on here is the time that they finished at, right? And this is the time after Verstappen crossed the finish line, and if we look at it, Nico finished 56 seconds afterwards. 56 seconds is a large gap, right? And I mean, it's by no means am I expecting Haas to overnight magically get that silver bullet that's gonna get them back up into the top. But I mean, you're losing out so much pace and so much time to the front runners. I mean, some of the other teams that they're supposed to compete with, like Alpha Tauri, right? We've got one Alpha Tauri that's 49 seconds, 3 seconds ahead of them. The other Alpha Tauri was way further up, which was at 45 seconds behind Max, which is like 10 seconds faster than them. So I think they gotta have some form of improvements added into this vehicle somewhere. I don't know where they can find it. I think the start for them is looking at where are they. Like I said earlier, focus on the types of corners they want to be good at, and try master that. So that the moment when they get to those tracks where it requires that type of level of downforce, they're on the ball and they know that they can try and score some points that weekend with a good strategy for themselves. And in P14, we've got Yuki Tsunoda, a victim of strategy. Could you say it? Poor car pace. I know AlphaTauri did bring some extra performance to that car, but I don't know if Yuki's gelling well with those upgrades, because I mean P14 for a sprint race finish for Yuki, it's not looking that great. I mean, he lost out to his own teammate in one race, so I think the scoreline might end up being a 1-1 to them in terms of his teammate. Yuki has been almost beating all of his teammates. I mean, the Freeze is not a real competition at this point, but Yuki, that was not bad. It's very quiet of a race. I mean, he is right behind Fernando Alonso, and we all know Fernando is not an easy driver to overtake. He never will be. But yeah, I don't know. I have no other words for Yuki's performance in the sprint race this weekend.
Yeah, neither do I. In all honesty, you hit every nail on the head right there, because he had a relatively anonymous weekend, and it's a little underwhelming, because you want Yuki to do well. I think everybody's a Yuki fan because something about Yuki just makes you want to root for him. So it's unfortunate when he's not able to actually deliver on that, but that's not entirely his fault. I also think the car's not particularly good, and it struggles around COTA, specifically tracks like COTA, those high speed corners and such. It's not catered for them.
100%. And we will even see the result there with Danny Ricciardo. But before we get to Danny, the first of the two Aston Martin drivers, Fernando Alonso, he really shows the true pace of the car. But I mean, we heard Fernando complaining this whole weekend that this car is not it. Aston Martin, in terms of the development, I think they went wrong somewhere in their line of development, right? And it's fair, right? I think it's very fair that if they went wrong, right? And they need to realize, okay, we've gone wrong, and they need to figure out what they did wrong and start to correct it. I think Aston might just end up trying to bring something that might just help Fernando a little bit, but overall their focus should be on the next year's car. I mean, we only have 4 races left right now. We've got Mexico, Brazil, Las Vegas, and Abu Dhabi. I don't think it's worth Aston Martin's time or money to invest in bringing another upgrade package or a big upgrade package this late into the year, right? They've already lost the position to McLaren, and it's still a gain in terms of their positioning from where they started off last year versus where they ended up this year. I mean, if we just go to last year, Aston Martin was 7th in the championship. This year, they're going to end up in 5th. 2 positions gained with just one season. I think they could have had a better chance, but hey, man, This is motor racing, and they just
Stopwatch never lies.
stop.
The stopwatch never lies.
Yeah, the stuff notes never lies at all. I agree. Uh, on to P12 though, unless you have anything about Fernando you want to say.
No, no, I don't. But Danny Ricciardo is in P12, which is really sad. I mean, it's great because yes, he beat his teammate, but it's unfortunate because he's not close enough to the points. But it's nice to see him get a lot of running in the car, and he was able to get the sprint underneath him, so he was able to get those 19 laps in to like buff him to prepare for, which was good. I think just to assess how he feels and to go into the weekend with some actual, you know, like reconnaissance and awareness and knowledge of how he feels and how the track is feeling.
I think we must remember, I think this was Danny's actual first race weekend that he
Yes,
probably participated in, right? Because he
yeah,
broke his hand first in the second practice session at Zanderford, and from then he's been out. So for his actual first time running in the car, getting back up to racing speed for 19 laps and a practice session under his belt, P12 I don't think is too bad with this AlphaTauri. I mean, 2 positions off of 10th. I mean, look at this. He was only 3 seconds off of actually a points paying position. Okay, no. P10, not a points paying, because the sprint ends up with P8 being the points paying position, which was about 10 or 20 seconds off of the pace there. But off of points finishing position is what I meant to say. But I think he had a really good showing of his pace here in the qualifying or sprint race.
yeah. And for clarity, it was his third race weekend. His first was Hungary, then it was Belgium, then this one, the USA.
Okay.
But it's his first weekend back. So back after breaking your hand is a lot to adjust to. So I give him his plaudits for actually managing to hold it down in the car and didn't crash, kept it clean, drove it home, finished in P12, which is decent. If it was a race, he would be just outside the points, but unfortunately, he's a little bit further out this weekend because of the sprint.
Yeah. It, that just hurts him overall. But then the next driver on our list will be P11, Esteban Ocon.
Mhm.
This was a big shocker for me, though, right? I think the Alpines had some pace here for themselves this weekend, and to see Esteban end up in P11 was a bit of a disappointment for me. I really thought he had the pace, especially to catch Oscar Piastri, a driver who was looking very uncomfortable in the car and wasn't up to speed with the setup that he had going for himself here. I mean, he 2 seconds behind Oscar by the 19th lap, and I honestly thought Esteban could have done a lot better, but hey, man, I don't know. He just left it. I think he left too much on the table, and he probably could
I
have added
think
some more.
I think overall the Alpines are struggling. It seems as though similar to Aston, the development is sort of stagnated. Maybe because they're starting to focus on next year's car and they only have a specific amount of upgrades coming for the rest of this season. But I think that they should be putting a little bit. I mean, they should have at least put a little bit more effort into the car because unfortunately now they're going to their finishing position isn't going to be reflective of how quick the car actually is and how competitive their two drivers are. Because both their drivers are race winners.
Agreed, right? And for me, it's just more that, like, with Pierre Gasly finishing in 7th, right?
Mhm.
Esteban finishing in 11th is not representative of his speed and his pace. I believe he had so much more pace in himself there. To finish 10 seconds behind your teammate in the same machinery, I think he had a lot more of the pace. And don't forget, George Russell still had that 5 second time penalty, which, if he was there, he could have gotten that last points paying position for himself. Just to help himself just climb a little bit up in the leaderboard or construct. Drivers' Championship. Oh, constructors, the wrong word. But then,
Construction builders.
yeah, constructing of the drivers
Yes, indeed.
and their leagues right now. We got P10 Oscar Piastri. This looks like another race weekend that we saw from him early on in the year. You know, one where he really wasn't looking that great in the car, and I don't know if it's a thing that the novelty has worn off of the man's putting it up into P3 on the podium consecutive weekends, or at least in the top 5 consecutive weekends. But I think he this weekend, I think that sprint he probably got the setup incorrect for himself, which ultimately just hurt him for the rest of the qualifying sessions and race as well.
My apologies.
No problem. But because I mean, his own teammate Lando ended up P4, right, in the sprint race. I wonder if maybe they did a completely different setup for Oscar. I mean, they probably had a bit of a different setup for him, but whatever it was, it just didn't look like it was helping the driver's case.
I'm going to not be as hypercritical on Oscar because I think he's a rookie. I think his first time at COTA. Let's give the kid a little bit of a break, just like we would any other rookie that's had a very competitive rookie season. He came in a little cold-ish, but I think he's been very competitive. He's not that far off Alex. Okay, he is relatively far off Alex Albon, but he's. I think he's a really good driver. I think he's just taking a bit of time to acclimate to certain tracks. Maybe he's not as confident on Circuit de America because it's a lot of high-speed corners. So maybe that's playing into it. It's just a little bit of stress of, I don't want to bin it. I don't want to crash the car. Let me just play it safe. And it looks like that's what he did.
No, I think I'm gonna stand with Jensen Button on this one, right? You know, Oscar's shown us clearly that being a rookie doesn't matter. You know, if you get given the car and you have the pace and the performance to do it, the excuse of, oh, he's a rookie here and you need some time and a couple years to acclimatize to F1, all of this is nonsense. You know, Oscar's shown it with his performance in getting a P2, getting a P3, winning a sprint race himself. I think it's just more of a thing of him and the team probably made a mistake in terms of their setup for him, and it just didn't look right for him. And because Park Ferme came around, he was locked into that setup and just couldn't do anything further for himself, which ultimately just hurts him in both racing sessions. And yeah, that's all it is. I think he set the bar so high.
Yeah, but that's the nature of sprint weekends. It's if you get the setup wrong, you're kind of screwed, and you have to deal with the pain for the rest of the weekend because that's just how Park Ferme works. So yeah, there is some credit to that, but again, not going to be particularly harsh on him. Not a great performance by comparison, but I'm sure he'll bounce back. I'm not going to be hypercritical on the kid this weekend.
This sounds like McLaren bias to me. But
It is.
going on to the next driver, Alex Albon. I think this is my Williams bias coming in? Or I would say Alex bias. It's
Yes.
good job for him.
Yes, it's your bias.
P9. I mean, until they get another driver, I think, in that car aside from Logan, who can match Alex's performance and get ahead of Alex, I think Alex is just going to keep showing up to the plate, right? He's going to bring the points home whenever he can. He was just shy of the points. I mean, look, he was 3/10 behind George Russell. If he could have just pushed a little bit harder, he would have gotten snubbed George Russell of 1 point in the sprint race weekend, which would have been a a fun little thing for himself to show off it. Hey, I'm in a Williams, but I can still beat the Mercedes. Right, albeit George did receive a 5-second time penalty for track limits, as well as Guan Yu Zhou also received a 5-second time penalty for leaving the track and gaining an advantage, is what the FIA call it. But what can I say more, right? Alex has, every time the car is in a racetrack where the Williams have an advantage in terms of that top speed, the low drag setups that they could possibly run, Alex ends up coming and sneaking his way up into the top 10 quite a few times, you know. He's a silent ninja getting up into the top 10. We got the silent assassins who are the Alfa Romeos, but we got the silent ninja Alex Albon just sneakily stealing points away from the top, what would be the top midfield teams in a Williams, which is something incredibly funny to see. Right. And any comments from you?
I'm just saying, as an old fan of F1, I remember the glory days of Williams. So, and I've watched a lot of highlight videos where my dad shows me a lot of videos of look at all these cars, look at these amazing Nigel Mansell doing great things or in the car. So, you know, let's be critical of Williams, because the unfortunate thing is, as James Ross said, the car, the facilities are like basically 20 years old, and with that's going to take a lot of upgrading and a lot of moving the goalposts. And the fun thing is that they have a driver like Alex Albon to actually develop and keep the car moving forward, because the guy is so fast. And he also knows how big teams work. He's been at Red Bull, he's been at AlphaTauri, so he understands how the small and the large teams work. So he's the right person to mold the team around. And who knows, maybe Alex is the guy that can bring Williams to the glory days.
100%. I think Alex could be there. Speaking of James Files, he's trying to actually push the cost cap upwards in terms of the capital expenditure that you can have for the teams, because essentially what he's trying to do is help the teams that are further down, such as Haas, Williams himself, and I don't know who else we would include in a team further down. Maybe Alfa Romeo.
And if we're being completely honest, Alpine too, because they keep getting new investors, but you're just like, okay, what is it for? What does it do? What does it do?
Where's that money going?
You guys, where's that money? Yeah, because there's a cost cap. So what's it for? Right. Can you guys explain that? Because it doesn't make sense.
Right.
And it makes sense.
If you want me, I think it's just for salaries for the top execs. That's all it is. But that's something that's other politics that we're not going to get into here on the podcast. But James Vowles is trying to push so that Williams can spend that extra money that they've gotten from Darlington Capital in order to just help bring their facilities up. I mean, he said it's going to take over 20 million. I believe it was 20 million to get Williams up to modern standards. And that's just getting them up to modern standards. That still not means whether they're going to be competitive with an upgrade to the wind tunnel, CFD, and all of that. Right? They still need to fix all of the processes. But hopefully James Vowles gets given the time in that position to actually start making some meaningful changes to Williams. And with a driver like Alex Albon, I think that's always going to make it a lot easier on him to just say, hey, you know what, we've got a lovely we are still scoring some points where we can, but I think we've had enough talk about Alex. George Russell, P8, the first of the point scorers or last of the point scorers, depending on the order we're looking at.
That one was a penalty for gaining a position off the track, right?
Yes, that was gaining the position on Oscar Piastri off the track.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. He finished ahead of Oscar, and the time penalty maybe overall wasn't... I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to say because to an extent it was unnecessary because he would have finished one position higher technically.
Yeah.
So it's a little negligible at that point because he did finish within the points, got a point. I
Yeah.
mean, he got half the points he could have got, but he would have got no points essentially if he just stayed behind Oscar, because he was struggling to overtake. And in a track where, well, in a sprint, there's no opportunities to actually pit and get an undercut or strategize a way to actually get ahead of your opponent. So you got to do it on track. And if, as you could see, he did it off track, got the penalty, and ultimately still finished in P8.
I agree. I think it was something where the penalty was way too slow. Because I mean, we got to what? It was almost lap 16 when the FA announced that he's getting the time penalty, 5 second time penalty. Bro, that was incredibly late. By that time, when they already announced it, one, Pierre Gasly already overtook Oscar Piastri,
Mm-hmm.
and two, Alex also overtook Oscar Piastri, which means it's like it's not even a thing where it could have been like, George, you need to give the position back, right? Which I think Mercedes needed to watch that a little bit more carefully and tell him not give the position back, just to be safe, and
I'm,
overtake the
I'm going
man.
to be. I just want to make a sweeping declaration. I think Mercedes got a lot of things wrong this weekend.
But way too many things wrong with, and
Way
those
too many things this weekend, man. They really did.
it's some costly
From
mistakes.
strategy, from like it just seemed it's a bad weekend. It's a write-off weekend for Mercedes because genuinely you would think that, especially because you see how competitive they are. You see Lewis finishing in P2 on the podium. You're like, cool, great, that's good. But then you see George Russell finishing in P8. You see a time penalty because of something that when he did it, everybody saw it happening. Surely someone back at the garage should have seen that and said, "Give this, stop the paces back immediately," so that he doesn't incur a penalty, like number one, a penalty, or get swallowed up by Pierre Gasly, who was directly behind Oscar Piastri at the time. Well, directly behind him at the time. So yeah, just so many poor decisions by Mercedes, which we will get onto in the race because there are more to discuss.
About Mercedes' mess ups today. Let's go on to the next driver, Pierre Gasly. Good showing from him within his Alpine. I think he showed up to his job today, and he said he's gonna perform, and he really did perform. I mean, P7 getting 2 points for the team. I think it's a really good job done. I don't think he had much else to really do. I mean, he got a nice free position from George Russell, overtaking off the track, and I honestly think if George, if Pierre didn't initially start the conversation about George overtaking off the track, I don't think the FIA would have really looked at it. I know that um, Oscar did mention it to his engineer that please check if George didn't go off the track, but I think the damage was done by the time that happened, and he did a great Pierre. This is did a great job of keeping within that 5 seconds of George Russell just to make sure that he does keep that gain that one free position for himself.
Absolutely, absolutely right. Yeah, kept his nose clean, did exactly what he's supposed to do, finished with 2 points in a race where Esteban Ocon was relatively anonymous. So very well done to Pierre Gasly. But moving on to P6, and the first of the Ferraris was Carlos Sainz, who has not had his teammates' number over the past weekend because he finished in P6 and his teammate finished on the podium.
Yeah, I mean Saturday was not looking like a great day for Carlos. I think he didn't have his Valtteri Bottas porridge or become the smooth operator that we know him to be. To end up so far off, I think Ferrari. I don't think you can't even blame Ferrari. It's just more. This is the sprint race is more about the drivers, right?
Yeah.
A little bit on
Concerns about
terms of the teams way with the tire choice, right? But outside of that, it's purely on the driver itself. to perform. No team has to meddle with you in terms of, oh, may you need a pit now, and then has a 10-second pit stop because the pit crew couldn't change one tire quick enough, which was something I did not expect from Carlos. I was expecting Carlos to do some miracles here, and we might see that a little bit later in the actual race result. But I mean, P6 isn't too bad for Carlos' finish, although he could get better. Right. On to the driver who needed this next big break, right? Sergio Perez, right? I was impressed. I really am that he looked like he got his form back, right? He was looking like he was incredibly competitive. He was starting to actually do some overtakes immediately, and it looked like he was starting to drive that rocket ship. And I was like, yeah, is this the day? Is this the day where Sergio brings his resurgence just before the weekend before the Mexican Grand Prix, so that he can come and bring a great showing for Mexico? And I mean,
Well, it's the weekend that he really needs to, because he needs to get some form, get some rub before the Mexican Grand Prix, because no Mexican has ever won the Mexican Grand Prix, and it would be amazing for the Mexican national anthem to play in that stadium, or that track. Imagine the energy there. Also, it's also the essentially Halloween
Cinco
uh,
de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo in Mexico. So that's also such a vibe. So, if there's ever a race you wanted to go to, I genuinely think Mexico would be one of those.
I 100% agree. Especially during Cinco de Mayo, there's a bit of a vibe. I
Imagine
know,
that, man. You're
like,
just vibing, you're doing a thing, you're going, you're Cinco de Mayo, and then you go, you watch a race.
and
Ah,
you
man.
win, and your own
And
nationality
your guy
driver wins.
wins. Imagine that. That would be amazing. So I hope Checo
Bring that
can
form.
put it together, but we all know that the inevitable end is coming, because that should be his new nickname from now on. That's what we should call him, the inevitable end.
The end of what? That is the real question you have to ask yourself. The end
Yeah.
to I don't. I'm not gonna even say it right now because I have high hopes for the man's right now, right? And this was an important race for him because Lewis Hamilton's been closing in on that gap. Although Qatar, Lewis didn't manage to score any points, nor did Sergio, right?
Hmm.
And so that kept the gap there perfectly. It helped Sergio that Lewis crashed out, right?
Yeah.
And now Lewis getting P2 in a sprint
Mhm.
race where Sergio only gets 4 points. I mean, that's 3 points that Lewis gained on Sergio in the championship, which is something that he cannot afford to have to him
Yep.
right now. And he needs to start putting himself into that P2 position so that he can make sure he stays ahead of Lewis. I mean, if he could just get two second places, I think Lewis can no longer compete in terms of overtaking him in the championship. But we'll get on to that little topic and drama
Yes, we
coming
will.
soon.
Yes, we will.
Coming soon. We'll talk about that in the race results. P4, Lando Norris. Damn.
Great
Lando.
race. I think he was sensational. He's been absolutely sensational over the second part of the season. He has been brilliant. I am just so freaking happy as a McLaren fan. It's awesome to see.
It really is great to see Lando performing so well on in that car. Like, yeah, there's not much you could say. Obviously, he didn't have the pace as well, but if you look carefully, I believe Lando was trying to catch up to Charles later on in that stint, closer to lap 17, 18, and 19 there. I mean, the gap
Mhm.
is just, it's like what? A second basically behind, roughly just before a second, nine
Just
tenths,
under a second.
right?
So, I mean, that's closing in on that DRS, and we all know how quick those McLarens are. And in all honesty, Lando is a really good overtaker. He's someone that's really good on the wheel. So, yeah, I mean, I think a podium wouldn't have been out of the question. A couple more laps, maybe it would have been possible. But a P4 finish on a sprint weekend is really good to take it into a race weekend where you had a really good quali session.
100%. And I mean, with that, with just those 5 points that he gained, he brought the gap to Aston Martin down by 5 points. So that means all they had to do in the race is just gain 6 points. So that's like what, a P8 finish, and
Mm-hmm.
2, 4, 6, yeah, P8 finish, and they easily match Aston Martin and or get ahead of them because based on drivers' positions. But good job to Landa.
And we know that that's not what they did. They did they did the next best thing.
Yeah, they overtook them in a, in
Yep,
a in a very McLaren-esque fashion, right there.
indeed.
P3, the start of the podium. Charles Leclerc, right?
Ferrari.
This was the big shocker for me, right? I was surprised, right, that Charles had this pace. But then again, reason why I was surprised more is because we know Charles is a one lap man. You know, he performs over one lap incredibly well. Maybe not over the last
He's
few
a
races.
qualifying merchant.
Say again?
He's a qualifying merchant.
Yeah, the qualifying merchant. We need to get nicknames for everybody, so we have
No,
them all
like
down.
I've got a bunch of them, and like he's the qualifying merchant. He really is. He's someone that can put it on the P1 position on a good weekend, but he can also have an absolute shocker of a race, or have a shocker of a quali session, or put it in the wall. But he kept it clean. He was consistent. He was very much adrift and had a lonely race, but you know what else can you ask for? He got a podium at the end of it, and he got 6 very valuable points for Ferrari.
100%. It was a really good drive from him. Although Lewis did overtake him immediately into that first corner, and then it was just
Yeah,
a done job.
again, that was a mugging.
Yeah, there was stuck under his belt. It was like, bye, I'm going now, and there was
It's
nothing
like, oh,
much he
this
could
is
do.
mine. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, this is mine. And it's like, well, what?
Yeah, Charles,
Max
he got
Charles
confused.
really just sat there and just had he had a really that was a humbling experience, because yes, again, it shows that the Ferrari's race pace is somewhat lacking still.
Yeah, it really did. I mean, 17 seconds to lose over 19 laps. When
Yeah.
everyone is
No.
kind of managing pace a little bit, and that it's not looking the greatest there, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then number two on the second highest spot of the podium, Lewis Hamilton, 7 points on the
Hmm.
board, closing in that gap onto Sergio Perez. Quite a good drive. He looked like he had some pace to compete with Max quite a bit. Closer to the end of that sprint race, he was actually matching Max's time to like a tenth or 2/10 off, which was a precursor to what was to come in the race events, which was
Hmm.
a good sight, and especially to see that Mercedes brought that new upgrade package to COTA, albeit to their highest detriment. But that package, we clearly saw it was working, right? And this means it means good news for Mercedes, because next year they are going on to having a greater package for themselves, which, I mean, if they starting off next year with like a package like this, that means they're
Yes.
competing against Red Bull within the next 6 races of 2024. So if Bahrain is the same level as Lewis is right now, within the next 6 races before Monaco, Mercedes are probably gonna take a race win off of Red Bull. That's my prediction.
For me, that would make me very happy. I'm not gonna lie to you. I have a soft spot in my heart for Hamilton. So, also, just to point something out, I mean, Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton on the top step is becoming a regular occurrence. It's one of those things where you kind of forgot about it when you're like, oh yeah, now it's gonna be Charles and Max, and then you're like, and Lewis goes, "Do you forget about me? I'm still here."
I'm still in the sport. Did I say I retire? No.
No, not at all.
I'm right here. I'm taking that.
I mean, the thing is, next year, that car looks like it's going to be relatively competitive. The McLaren looks like it's going to be competitive. The Ferrari should get its feet under it and be a bit more competitive. But yet again, we're not sure about that. Same thing with Aston Martin. Those two are a bit up in the air. But with Mercedes and McLaren. Those are two cars that I look at and I'm like, yo, those are two teams that have two really good drivers, and the car is developing. The car is developing. So the reality is, I still think Max Verstappen wins the next World Championship because the other teams and other drivers will be taking too many points off each other, and Max's consistency will take him to the World Championship.
I hope it's not as easy as it was this year for Max, right? I think Max
I don't
himself
think
is
it will be.
I think Max himself as well doesn't want it to be as easy as it was. I know he might not say, "Oh, it's easy," but it was. Looking at it, it was a walk in the park for Max this season, right? I think Max wants that competition. He wants to get that, not as toxic as 2021 was, but he wants that level of competition again. He wants to see and experience and be part of that racing, and it's fun for the sport overall to just see. And if we just quickly go talk about the man himself, Max Verstappen, P1, started on pole, finished it on pole, with a 9-second gap. He really pulled off quite the pace right here.
The inevitable end.
Yeah, the inevitable, Mr. Inevitable, Thanos himself.
Yeah,
Right here.
he's undeniable.
It's undeniable, it's like they'll ask him, what did it cost? And he'll tell him, Sergio Perez. What did it cost? It just cost Sergio Perez. That's all it was right there.
No, dude, don't say that. That's so rude. That's so. Oh man.
I mean, it's just a joke. It's a
joke. It's a joke. It's a joke.
It's a
if
joke.
Sergio ever listens to this, it's just a joke.
It's just a joke. We don't mean anything by it. It's just he is Mr. Inevitable. That's the big thing.
He is the inevitable end. He is Mr. Inevitable. He's Max Verstappen.
Yeah, he managed the pace quite well in the sprint overall, and
yeah.
Even though he had some problems.
He did everything well overall, man. Like, he's just been great.
There's nothing bad you can say. I mean, P1, like, before Singapore, his worst, like we say again, his worst finish was P2. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. Right. On to qualifying for the actual race. This happened on Friday, right? This was a spicy one, right?
It was.
I think we can just have another quick shootout of qualifying here. P20 to P15, right? We had Logan Sargent, P20, Lance Stroll, P19, Alex Albon. A little bit disappointing for Alex there into P18. I was expecting a lot more from him there. Fernando Alonso, we heard in practice, if you watch practice, he was not comfortable with this car. He didn't like it at all. And they had to do a change for the actual race start.
Yep.
Which changed everything for him. Nico Hulkenberg, P16. Danny Rick into P15. This was the big shocker, right? I thought Danny was going to come out guns blazing against Yuki to try and take that head-to-head and try and beat him, but Danny just ended up like almost a second off the pace. But this was down to track evolution, right?
But also the fact that Danny Ricciardo, this was his first qualifying session back in the car since breaking his wrist. It was on the Friday. He'd only had practice and then jumping right into qualification. So, cool, not good, not great, not what you would expect from a driver like Danny. But yeah, the P15 is what it is.
Yeah, it really was. P14 all the way to P10. We've got Kevin Magnussen. Kevin put a big surprise on my screen when I saw him put it up into P6. I think it was actually P5, and then he moved down to P6 with the time. And I was confuffled by that lap time. I was like, no ways, this man he's actually so competitive. Did Haas's upgrade package really be fruitful this time round? And he ended up tumbling down the order, which was just a sad sight to see. But then again, we did learn that track evolution played a big role, and multiple drivers did multiple cooldown laps, which was
Mm-hmm.
a really surprising thing to see, which meant they couldn't do multiple laps again to just try and go a little bit faster. And track position was absolutely key in playing in your qualifying year. Right, Mr. Silent Assassin Valtteri Bottas. That is, he finished P13. Or he's gonna start. He started the race P13, which was an interesting thing from him. Him and Joe were actually also trying to put up some competitive times. I mean, if we just look at it, to P10's time, right? Joe was what, a tenth off? He's in the hundreds, or relatively a tenth off in terms of pace. Valtteri, who was in 13th, he was a bit slower. He was 4 tenths slower than P10, but Joe in P12 actually made some great showing, and he was very close. I mean, if Oscar had a single track limits violation for that lap, it could have been a thing that Joe could have been starting a lot higher than what he ended up being. P11, Yuki Tsunoda, where this was a big surprise. Yuki was so close, man, absolutely
So
close
close.
into getting into Q3.
It feels like absolute millimeters because you look at the times and he's so close. He's so close. He's a little bit over a tenth of a second off.
Mm. And it was just the time. I remember even the AlphaTauris told Yuki, stay in the car. There might be some track limits violations that might get you through. But
And it didn't happen.
it never happened. Oscar Piastri managed to save himself from getting knocked out entirely from the race. Oh, from not the race, from qualifying 2.
Yep.
Right? So, scoring himself a P10 finish. P9, Sergio Perez. This was quite disappointing for me. I won't lie. Sergio starting in P9, I was hoping he could get his form back. He's had a lot of. We've been talking negative about the man quite a bit, but I think he had the pace. I believe he has the pace, and he has the motivation to stay there and just use the car. But I don't think he's gelling well with it, as well as having only one practice session to set up the car and relying on historical data to set up the car. It just didn't seem like it was enough for him. P8, Esteban Ocon. Not bad, not bad. This was better representation of his showing instead of like what he did in the sprint qualifying.
I 100% agree.
Although this is, we are looking at it in opposite. We saw this performance first and then the sprint qualifying, which was a very big disappointment there for him. But
yes,
when I saw this is what I expected from him, He's going to beat P8, P7 fighting his teammate. I mean, even if you look at the gap between these two guys, that is incredibly small margins to be fighting each other on. In terms of times in Q2, I mean Q3, that's also some small margins for each other. And
that is like 5/10 of a second twice.
500ths.
That's insane.
Not 5/10 of a second. 500ths. You mean
5/100 of a second. My apologies. But this is what you expect from Alpine on a track with fast corners, because you assume that that's how they're built because they've been competitive on tracks like that in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So when they qualified here, you're like, cool, yeah, this is where you expect them to be. And then Saturday happens, and then, like Ocon has a really terrible qualifying session. And then you're left scratching your head, wondering what is going to happen, what's next.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we got Max Verstappen P6, bro. This was a big shocker. And the thing is, I called it when it happened, right? I watched it. Max did get the fastest lap overall, but it was deleted for track limits at turn 19. He just went way too wide. And I saw it with that camera angle that we got given. And I was like, that's track limits right there and then.
Just a little smidge.
I think it was millimeters for Max, and that lap was just deleted. And it was just a sad time to see, which means George Russell got up into P5 because he didn't get because Max's lap was deleted. George's qualifying, I think it was okay. I think George just as well. Most drivers were suffering from that one practice session around COTA. They didn't have enough time to get that set up right for themselves, especially when Mercedes brought the upgrades to the cars, right? Bringing upgrades to a sprint race weekend hurts you quite hard because you're not going to get as much data on those upgrades
100%.
in the practice sessions as we can get. Mr. Carlos Sainz. Hey. P4
The
for
smoothest of operators.
P4. This man, he was doing some consistency here. He improved. He was better than what he did in the sprint race, but it's actually the opposite. He performed well in the qualifying, and in sprint shootout qualifying, he dropped down a couple positions. What is his fastest lap here? 1:34.9. Compared to the sprint shootout, he matched his time, really. The only difference is that everyone else was faster. So that was
Well,
a big
respect to Carlos for being consistent, but that's unfortunate in this regard because
it's qualifying.
yeah, everybody else took a step forward.
Yeah, and the thing is, consistency is beautiful for the race.
Yeah.
Not for qualifying. Qualifying, you need that burst of pace out of nowhere, getting that time, and it didn't pay off too well. Lewis Hamilton starting the podium off in P3. This was a big surprise. I was very interested and invested in seeing what could Lewis possibly do with a P3 start into the race. I honestly thought he could have gotten that podium position because he was overall the fastest driver in the second sector, which means that was majority of the back straight, right, into turn 12, which is the actual hairpin or left-hander there. And Charles manages to get fastest first sector, Max fastest third sector, and Lewis fastest second sector, which it just shows some of these drivers like different types of parts of the racetrack. But onto P2 to quickly round this off. Lando Norris, bro. Lando freaking Norris. P2 to start. In a car where in the practice session he didn't look the greatest. And it didn't look like he was quite comfortable with that car at all.
But yeah, I mean, Lando didn't look too comfortable, but he ended up being really. He put the car where it needed it to be in order to qualify competitively, and he had a relatively competitive weekend. If I'm being completely honest, he's shown a lot of consistency this season. He has. With the tail end of this season, he's really begun to put it together and show that, if Max wasn't around,
Lando would be winning races right now. He honestly would be.
Yes, he would be.
It's hopes and dreams that next year McLaren can provide that beautiful car. All right, we'll get on to that.
It shouldn't be hopes and dreams. They should be going and building cool things in MTC. Have you seen that? Have you seen what MTC looks like? They better be building fast race car for next year, bruh. Us McLaren fans are tired of the beginning of every season. You come to every testing session thinking, okay, it's gonna be crap, because it always is. Every testing session.
It's pain. At least you guys get to feel a little bit of the Tifosi pain, right? Brothers in arms. You guys get to struggle together.
No, we're not. No, we're not. We're not the same. We are not the same. Do not conflate us. We are not the same. Ferrari fans are delusional. They believe that their guys are going to win, for some reason, all the time.
I mean, when Charles Leclerc puts it into P1 like he did here, do you have hopes that he won't win the race? I think you'd come into it being like, oh, Charles could win the race here,
Strategy. Am I the person that watches that strategy wall? Because I don't know how they keep believing that they're going to somehow get it right. I don't at least I just sit there and it's like, oh, the car's good. Yup. That's great. I've had rough seasons, guys. I have seen pain. I might as well have moved to Madrid. The amount of Spain I've experienced.
It is actually.
No, no, no. It's ridiculous, man. It's ridiculous.
It absolutely is. Let's go on to oof, oof. Ladies and gentlemen, you on the street, on the actual, you can on the screen, you can actually see the two biggest talking points here. We'll get to that a bit later.
Disqualification.
Absolute disqualifications for two drivers. Esteban Ocon, first driver to retire because of contact in lap one with Oscar Piastri, ended up his side pod ended up getting damaged significantly. That he had a full-on drop off in pace, which is
Mm-hmm.
it's so sad because that's more DNFs under that Alpine's belt that you can ever possibly imagine, right? Like, how many times have we seen the fact that Esteban Ocon has had DNFs?
I think he's got the most DNFs this season.
Does he? Let's go look for
Yeah,
Esteban
he
Ocon
felt, he felt, felt.
in P12. Sorry, I cannot read right now. Oh, that I already see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
6.
7
Ow, that's a
DNFs
lot.
in a 23
That's
lap
a,
race or season. That is a lot of DNFs, man. It's gotta
yeah.
hurt.
The thing, I don't know what Alpine is doing. I don't know I mean, because
Okay.
it's not like every time it's not just crashing, it's also reliability. So it's a combination of different aspects that's culminating in Ocon not being able to finish races so regularly. This time he took basically a knockout punch, and the damage to the car was really significant, and he just wasn't able to keep it on track, which is really unfortunate because if you look at where he qualified in P7, it's disappointing because you want your driver to be able to finish the race, and unfortunately in a situation like that he wasn't able to.
Yeah, absolute painful for him. Oscar Piastri, P19, next DNF because of the contact he made with Esteban Ocon. I think it was
Mhm.
just. I think he might have gotten some floor damage potentially for himself, which it just hurt because he just thought. No, it wasn't actually. McLaren just told him to stop. There was a problem. I think the
Yeah,
contact created the problem,
I,
but
that's what I think so too, because it wasn't exactly disclosed, but it just seemed like the performance had a big drop off, and he also retired on lap 10. So it's only 4 laps after the contact with Ocon.
exactly. No, actually, no. It's 9 laps later because remember contact happened on lap one into turn one.
Oh yes, you're correct. Yes, 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 you're absolutely correct.
So it took them a while to be like, okay, no, retire the car. And another
Yeah.
driver had a technical problem and had to retire. Fernando Alonso. That rarely do you see a DNF from Fernando, right? And this time it was just Aston Martin saying, "No, the car. Let's just retire the car. It's not. It's not looking good
Yeah, I believe they had a rear suspension issue,
as
which
well."
is
Mm,
unfortunate. But the thing is that that's a that's a chassis from the last race. It's already gone through a lot. I mean, I have there's so many questions about Aston. They started the season really competitively, and then now they're just a shell of what their former selves were. And with Fernando finishing where he finished, and DNFing, now you've got Lance Stroll as your only hope in order to
gain some
secure
points.
some semblance of success. But you know, eh, this weekend at least he came to play, which we'll get to. But moving on to the
Anyway,
first actual finish of the Grand Prix, sadly, Danny Ricciardo. That one really hurt. It really sucked.
it
There was a point when he was further up in the standings. He was sitting around, I think, P13, and then just ended up going backwards. And just he struggled. It just wasn't great for him. And when you look at where his teammate finished, that's a real stark comparison.
mm,
Because then you start to wonder, what would Liam Lawson have done in the car?
yeah. He could have possibly been right there, but we need to
And
give Danny Sweets time to come back.
we do.
Right?
The thing is that the unfortunate thing is that we just said being a rookie doesn't give you an excuse to, you know, um,
Not
give you
perform.
any excuses.
Yeah.
So, also Liam Lawson proved that being a rookie doesn't give you an excuse. So Danny's got tons of experience, multiple Grand Prix winner. Yes, he's coming back from an injury, but it's some as an athlete, you expect to come back from that injury and be able to be competitive. That's why he took so much time off.
100%. Right.
Uh, Because there was talks that he was supposed to come back during Singapore, and if he postponed for two additional races, that's a lot more rehab, a lot more exercise, a lot more sim work that you can practice with and get more acclimatized and prepared for a race weekend. Again, a sprint race weekend is a lot to jump back into, and that's maybe why he wasn't able to finish so competitively. But again, racing is racing, man.
Yeah, it really is. P14 goes to Kevin Magnussen, another driver. He fell down, or he gained some positions because of some retirements there, which is overall big gain for him. But had no pace overall. Ended up getting lapped by Max and a few of the drivers there, which man, it's a never ending story of Haas. They need to bring some form of a design direction to themselves right there. If you don't
Yeah,
mind, let's
that's
go.
the next big problem for them at this point. They bought their upgrade, and this is where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, this is where they're going to finish because the next four races are really close in succession after one another. And, Mexico is very competitive.
Ooh.
And then we all know the competition at at Sao Paulo. That is one of the most
Ooh.
amazing racetracks on the circuit, in my opinion.
It
I
brought.
know we've got Las Vegas, which is new, and then Abu Dhabi, which has some upgrades to it in comparison to what we originally are used to, those upgrades we saw last year. But it's
It's
I
still Abu
don't
Dhabi.
know. I don't see any of those races being anything that Haas can compete in.
No, I also don't think so. I think Haas's season's already ended right now. If they do perform, I think it's to the detriment of other drivers at the moment, and that's gonna be the story of their life until they figure something else out for themselves there. But moving on to our silent assassins, P13 and 12 for Valtteri Bottas and Guan Yu Zhou, right? Really good. I thought they were going to do a different strategy. Like overall, I thought they had the pace here, and what they could have done was put one of their drivers on like the hard tires to go for
Mhm.
a longer stint. Do like a double hards medium, or even like a hards double medium type strategy for themselves here, where they could have gotten something more. Right? I mean, they're fighting the Haas's and the Williams, and I think they could have done it, right? I had the faith in them, and at one point they had the track position, but they were just, I think, due to poor pit strategy as well as how long it took them to do the pits. I think Guan Yu Zhou had like a 3.4 second or 3.5 second pit stop, which is really really slow. That hurts your time, your race time overall quite poorly. And then Valtteri Bottas as well couldn't really show up much with this car and just manages to sneak by with a P12 finish for himself.
Just outside of the points and relatively anonymous, as our silent assassins always do.
100%. P11, the better of the Haas cars. It got really close for Haas. Yeah, they could have scored some points again this weekend with Nico Hulkenberg if the FIA looked at everybody's cars, which we'll get to just now. But yeah, I think my point still stands as we said with Kevin Magnussen. If cars have two great drivers, they just need a better car in order to race. 2, the
Indeed,
spice.
they do. Indeed, they do.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which,
The
the guy in
spiciest.
P10,
The spiciest.
Mister,
Go
the
for it.
spiciest take of the, or one of the spiciest takes. Logan Sargent scored his first points yesterday.
Oh, it's actually today.
And by the time you're listening to this podcast, it will be on Sunday, but I mean the week prior. But
Monday.
unfortunate. I mean, it's like it's one of those things. It's an unfortunate way to score points, which we will get onto. But the fact of the matter is,
You
he
got the,
scored points.
yeah, you got
The
those.
rules are the rules, and he scored points yesterday.
You got those points, and
Well,
he's
actually, technically, he scored them on Monday.
yeah, which is the same day we're doing the recording today, and,
Indeed.
and it was pretty good from him. I mean, it can help
Yeah.
rejuvenate his spirits to say he's finally scored points. He can run home, Mom, I scored points, and be
And
like,
do you know what? Like, let's give him some credit because he was really, really he was competitive.
mm-hmm,
He's really not that far off
Alex.
his teammates. He's about a little bit over a second off him, and he kept his nose clean. He didn't crash. He performed when he needed to at his home Grand Prix, and honestly, I give him his plaudits for this weekend because he had a really good Sunday. He had a really good Sunday.
Excellent showing from him, and we must give him his round of applause for his great performance. Yeah, I mean, what a way to score
Absolutely.
your first points at your home race.
Yeah, yeah.
Albeit it should have been a little bit earlier than right now with 4 races left to go. But hey, man, he scored points, and hopefully it brings him some rejuvenation in order to fight with that car and try and gain more positions. I mean, Mexico's also going to be a track of similar nature to
Mhm.
COTA, whereby they've got the long straights, they've got the low drag setups, which he can try utilizing to getting himself back into the points and fighting for that, right? P9, Alex Albon, lovely, lovely.
Yes, sir.
He gained another beneficiary of the FIA's meddling, is what I'm gonna call it, and
Yep.
I mean 2 points. That just helps him go further and further up into the results. I mean, where's Alex? Alex goes up to P. He's still in P13, but
I mean,
that's
he's a
six.
long way off Esteban Ocon, but the fact is he's created the distance that he needs in order to make sure that Valtteri Bottas is definitely not catching him, and nor is anyone. But, still we have to point out that Liam Lawson still has more points than Logan Sargent.
Liam managed to do some crazy numbers there, right? Uh, P8 Yuki Tsunoda.
Yeah,
This is the performance I was looking for from Yuki.
yeah. This was definitely what you're expecting from Yuki, but to contrast what you see from Danny Ricciardo finishing in P15 and you see Yuki finishing not only in the points but in P8. I mean, that's he grabbed points. That's a significant haul for the team. That's a significant haul for Yuki. That's I mean, it's a great drive. He kept his nose clean. He was consistent. Did exactly what he was supposed to do, and you know brought it home.
You absolutely did.
But
Uh,
someone that I really want to talk about in P7 is Lance Stroll, because we have given him so
Flag.
much hell,
Oh.
so much hell.
Mm-hmm.
And for the day that Fernando Alonso wasn't able to put it together and also had to retire the car, we see Lance doing the thing that he is supposed to have been doing all season, and that's putting it in the points.
100%.
Another beneficiary of the shenanigans that the FIA has done, but in all honesty, he was still going to finish in the points regardless, and he had a really clean race, kept it clean, drove it to the end in a car that didn't seem like it was particularly manageable or easy to manage and cope with from what we saw from Fernando Alonso.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I have to give it to Lance. Well done to actually get back into some form and score some points for the team to just make sure that they can try catch up to what McLaren has done to overtake them in the championship. Right, and he could be his beneficiary of the FIA's meddling. Right, another beneficiary, Pierre Gasly. Pierre Gasly did a great job, I think. Kept his nose relatively clean, had a smooth race here, and ended up in a bit of a no man's land with no one in front of him. But it just shows the pace of the Alpine. I mean, we look at it, it's almost a full on 20-second gap from Pierre to George Russell. That is a gap and a half, right?
Yeah, that's when you can see the big difference between the car's performance.
It really shows there. But I think Pierre did a solid job to keep the car in
He
there
did.
and racing overall.
And when you look at where Pierre finished, you kind of think that Ocon would have been able to finish somewhere close to him, and a double points finish would have been really valuable for Alpine. But unfortunately, that big collision between him and Piastri caused him to DNF.
Yeah, it really did hurt him there. I just want to get a few numbers here. Like, I mean, look, where's Pierre? Pierre's sitting in 10th position, right? And
Mhm.
I don't know if by end of the season if he'll be able to catch Oscar Piastri, because Oscar's been on a charge.
I don't believe so because Oscar, they still have a quick car, and I have faith that Oscar will be able to keep it consistent. It'll take a large amount. It'll take a race win from Pierre to get that sort of haul.
It really does. And I see here next up we've got Charles Leclerc, who
Oh,
can.
George Russell, you missed
Oh,
George
oh,
Russell.
oh, oh, sorry, apologies. I didn't. I thought were also
Yep.
talking about George Russell. George Russell. I wasn't expecting this. You know, usually George comes up with a crazy strategy to catch up to someone, and I mean, he did.
Talk about crazy.
Say again.
Talk about crazy strategy.
Yeah, talk about it. I mean, he did end up switching up his last pit stop there to try and start catching and catch Charles. And I mean, look at the gap. 3 tenths. He almost overtook Charles by the end of the race. And it was a close one. It was a very close one. Unfortunately, because he had to pit again, he lost his position to Sergio Perez as well as Charles.
Mhm.
But he nearly
But
made that
that
comeback.
is purely that's purely based on the fact that Mercedes tried to pull a one stop, and oh man, it just didn't work. It didn't work. It really didn't work. I mean, I get it. It's racing. Risk it to get the biscuit, but
Not
ooh,
at COTA. I don't think one stopper works
man,
well at
it didn't
COTA.
work. Man,
COTA's
it did not work.
COTA's that track where it's just like nah. A one stopper is not the most feasible thing. Like COTA's almost at that extremity where Qatar was at, right? Where it's like, oh shoot, the FIA almost have to mandate a set amount of laps that you can really do on a tire before you have to go and pit, right? COTA's just in the fine lines where Pirelli is able to produce a tire that can handle everything that goes on in COTA. Mind you, we did have some of the softer compounds for this race overall, but if we went to the harder tire compounds, I think if we were on those C5s, right, as the hard tires, I think the one stopper could have been very much feasible for George Russell. But Pirelli were like, no, we want to keep it at a two stopper for this, for the race, you know. And
Yeah, I mean, yet again, we've said it before, we'll say it again. Bring back tire wars. I want tire manufacturers not to. I don't want Pirelli to just say, you know what, we're just going to bring these tires. I want another tire manufacturer to say, cool, we're just going to bring harder tires on you and see what happens.
yeah, and see what teams are
And
gonna
let's
opt for those tires.
see. Let's see.
Yeah, definitely. But
But speaking of let's see,
hmm,
let's see what happens when you shave the plank off the bottom of your car. You get disqualified.
apparently so. I think the thing is with Charles, I feel like those it was hundredths of a millimeter, right? That his
The
plank
rules are
was
the
off.
rules. The rules are the rules.
100%. Rules are the
Like,
rules.
I think
I
I
think
don't
that
wanna. I don't wanna. I don't wanna. Oh, but he was just a couple. No, the rules are the rules, bruh. If you're off the track, you're off the track. If you shave the plank down too much, it is what it is. The rules are the rules.
no, I think what happened, right? I don't think it's rules are rules. I agree with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Be punished for your thing if you get caught, right? I mean, that's a big thing if you get caught,
As if you get caught.
right? I think that plank got shaved down during the race. That's what I honestly think. I honestly think it got shaved.
No. Like the reason why, because I had this discussion with my father because he was talking about at Spa when the Red Bulls were approaching Eau Rouge.
Yeah.
They kept slowing down because apparently because everyone was bottoming out, but they were bottoming out a little too much, which would have caused the plank to be reduced too much, which means they would have been disqualified. Remember, GP kept saying, Max, use your head, listen to what I'm saying, use your head.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he. So there was clearly a thought process of this could happen. So for Red Bull to make the adjustments at a track like Eau Rouge, well, at a track like Spa, Mercedes also should have. Mercedes and Ferrari should have made the adjustments because there's a lot of elevation changes on that track. The turn 1 is a huge elevation change.
Oh,
so yeah, it's just one of those things where you just like,
not
if you,
not only that, but
yeah,
I think the long straight. Did you see how many bumps there are on that long straight? It looks like the cars are porpoising, but it's not even them porpoising. It's just the bumps are really that much, and I think that's where Charles's plank got shaved off too much, right? In terms of Lewis, I think it's completely different. Mm-hmm.
With Lewis, it's completely different. In what way?
I think they were already non-compliant to begin with because Lewis was out by over 0.2 millimeters, right? Hundredths to be off, right? That I can believe is probably getting shaved off in the actual race, right? To be over to be over 0.2 millimeters off in terms of that, I think part of it is shaved off in the race, but Mercedes also were pushing the limits to be like, maybe they thought their car got checked already, so the FIA weren't going to come back and check them out again, and so they could try get away with it until they could make a more compliant part later on.
No, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. Yeah, it's a purely suspension setup. That's what would cause the plank to be shaved. Is the suspension was set at a level that meant that with the bouncing and the contact with the ground, it just shaved down a little bit more than what they expected it to. So I don't think there was anything nefarious. There usually isn't. It's just, it's racing. It happens.
It does. On to the next driver, Sergio Perez, though. P4. I think the FIA were loving this man today. Or yesterday. Yeah, no, today. Because they gave Lewis that penalty. Which means he has one extra race buffer to make sure that he stays ahead of Lewis, right? Now it's a thing.
He's got a 39-point lead on Lewis, which is impressive. And this might be the first time that Red Bull get a 1-2, but there's still 4 more races.
It comes
those are the other cars look really fast, so you never know. There is potential, and again, Checo might have an absolute howler for the next couple races. So you never know what could happen. Hopefully, Checo's able to keep it consistent, keep his nose clean, and take it to the end of the season. But he had a really clean race, really consistent this weekend.
He
impressive.
He needs it.
Impressive, especially going into Mexico.
I agree. Because the thing is, if Lewis is to finish second in the next 4 races, back to back, he overtakes Checo, right? With the same... okay, not with the same results. Checo, that's if Checo does not get any points for the next few races, right?
Yeah. Which is hopefully unlikely. I mean, in an ideal world, he'll win at Mexico.
Yep.
And then
it's
in an ideal world, and in my ideal world, Lewis will win in Brazil. I'm just saying, it's the circuit that, I mean, Lewis loves Brazil.
Oh, he does.
So
I mean, he's lost the first challenge.
I mean, Say again.
It was his last. It was his last to first challenge that he completed.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it was one of those. That's a driver for world champion right there.
Oh damn, he's fast. That guy fast. He hella fast.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it just performed.
Speaking of fast. Speaking of fast, not gonna lie, Carlos Sainz now grabbing his podium was actually pretty fast this weekend. Yes, 15 seconds off the pace in terms of end result, but to be able to be quicker than his teammate, especially considering that Charles has had his number all weekend and actually started in P1 to finish on track ahead of him before the disqualification is really impressive.
Yeah, it really does. It speaks of true value from him, and I mean that's the Ferrari driver that you really want, and not, but also at the same time, we must remember Carlos is doing his own thing in terms of Ferrari, and I wanted to say, Ferrari keep leaving Charles out to dry. They come to every race and they're just like, yeah, Charles, we are thinking of doing this strategy. What are your thoughts? And then it's just copy, and then Charles is like, okay, I want to do this, and it's copy. We are going to plan F, or at least this weekend we heard plan E, right? Which was like
plan C, I believe.
Plan C, and I was like, nah, Ferrari, please.
Here's the thing: we've heard them go run down the list of plans, and in all honesty, I don't know how anyone's going to remember more than 3. I'm busy driving a like a giant heater box around this racetrack, a heater box rocket around this racetrack. Let me focus on this. Please don't tell me to remember 11 strategies, because that's not my job. That's your job.
Yeah, you gotta be the one to tell me we're doing this, my guy.
I mean, genuinely, what you in an ideal world, you would just do like a fuse and fuse Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc, and you'd actually have a perfect driver.
Oh, definitely. Carlos' strategies.
Yeah, Carlos' strategy and consistency, and you've got Charles Leclerc's one lap pace and raw racing ability. You put that all together, and you got Max Verstappen.
You really do have Max Verstappen in the end there. But someone else who's got incredible consistency, Lando Norris, bro. Getting
Lando
that P2 finish, Lando freaking Norris, bro.
Lando.
This guy is getting snubbed the hardest of everything. I cannot believe. He really needs to get that victory, bro. Like P2 for doing his most at best to keep his consistency alive. His hopes and dreams are sitting there waiting.
Track, but P2 on Monday, but again, he just had a consistent weekend. He was really consistent, considering the fact that he is quite far off the pace in terms of behind Lewis and then by extension Max. He's been so consistent every weekend lately. It's that he just needs a slightly faster car. The car just needs a little bit more downforce, a little bit more power, and that victory is just there. It's so close. It's so close. I can feel it. It's just there.
It was almost there, and it's so close. Someone who was also so close this race, Lewis Hamilton. Oh
yeah.
Oh my gosh, he was 2.2 seconds off of overtaking Max Verstappen. I was saying, if the race had gone on for 4 more laps, Lewis was overtaking Max, and that was it. There was nothing Max could really do, and it would have been a done sealed deal. Lewis wins this race after a 2-year sabbatical from winning. It's not something that he wanted, but he was incredibly close, and it was a spectacle to watch Lewis chase down Max. The only thing that was missing.
It looked like Lewis of old. Got that I felt the magic again. You know that feeling. It's like ooh, I like this. I forgot how this feels.
Mercedes, they were stirring their cauldron up with this plan right here, right? And I feel like the only spice they missed out on adding into this was just Bono saying his iconic line. It's hammer time. That's all that was needed. I honestly think it's all that was needed. That Bono just needed to tell him, it's hammer time. And that was it. And I think Lewis would have just gone onto that pace and to catch Max.
It's literally You know when Goku does KO don't it's
Yeah,
like
100%.
that that's Lewis. It's because Lewis goes Super Saiyan like in Brazil, Lewis said Super Saiyan.
Yeah.
When Bono says it's hammer time, it's KO my boy. It's okay. You want for the next 5 minutes, I'm gonna be the quickest dude on track.
And he's gunning for those positions. If you want
Mm.
him to close 10-second gap, bro, he's the guy to go do it, right? The only other man who could try and close a 10-second gap that fast is Max Verstappen himself, bro. Like, that is some
The
freaking
guy who finished in P1.
exactly. And there's a reason why he's
Man.
there, because he's just that
Yeah, yeah.
fast of a driver to end up into P1, man. And
Yep. He's just speed, bruh. He is speed. You know when you hear Lightning McQueen go speed, speed. I am speed. If our resident racing driver was here, he would be screaming at me for saying that. But hey, we can't deny this, man. It's Max Verstappen. He is the quickest dude on track, and it's not even a question.
yeah, 100%, he is the fastest man on track and just gets that extra victory for himself and under his belt. I mean, what more can you say about the man's himself? And the only thing I want to also talk more about is that if the FIA decided to check more drivers, we would have had more DNFs or disqualifications at COTA, right? There were sources saying
Mm.
that yeah, if they checked more people, there would have been more disqualifications, which I feel is just like it's a bit of a robbery to do that to just two drivers. Only two drivers, right? Like, if you know that some other teams plank as the FI, you know their plank is not going is most likely shaven off that. You should probably crack down on that, right? Like the track limits violations. If you're going past track limits, you shouldn't be getting away with it, right? Rules are rules. But I think the enforcing of it is where there needs to be more improvement, right? I think they need to get more people on it so that they can just keep enforcing these rules, so that everyone's vehicle can get checked, right? You
What
know,
they need to do is they need to go and they need to um, clone Charlie Whiting and
right?
just regen him and bring him back because then everything will go back to normal. Everything will be fine again. Because I don't remember any of this stuff when Charlie Whiting was around, dude.
The things were in order when Charlie was around. You couldn't get
So,
away
so
with nonsense,
happened. Everything just happened so smoothly on race weekend.
right?
And then we got blessed with the beauty of Michael Massey and whoever the hell these new guys are.
The mysterious stewards.
Yeah, okay. I mean, Messi's gone, but now we've got these rotating stewards, and it's just it's just so frustrating because they're never efficiently quick enough with their rulings.
Mm,
Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. When the ones that matter, they don't get them, they don't do them quickly enough. It's just frustrating. It's
it
just
really
very
is.
frustrating.
And you know what's not gonna make it any better if it, is that the fact that Andretti is joining F1, right? We've got it confirmed. The 11th team into F1, making it a 22 car race, is Andretti, right? Alongside Cadillac for their deal into F1. The only problem right now is that the teams, Toto Wolff, Christian Horner, these guys aren't happy about having to split their money, and they want to make that anti-dilution fund increase from 200 million to 600 million, bro. Like, some teams aren't even worth that much as it stands right now.
I just want to say, they're smoking their socks, bro. They're smoking their socks, bro. Do you know the thing is they have to let them in, otherwise it's going to look like in air quotes, a boys only club or a it's us only,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a certain level of arrogance. It will feel like the old days of F1 that nobody liked. Those days that you actually despised a lot of things happening in the sport. So I don't think that's something that the FIA or the teams specifically should be doing. They should not be acting like that. They should not be making these salacious demands because they're honestly outrageous. It's genuinely outrageous to ask someone to spend 600 million just to give away for free, and then to spend additional billions of dollars to develop a car in order to be a back marker for 5 years before you're able to actually be some semblance of competitive in the midfield. No, 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 no. That's not okay for me.
I agree. It's not okay. I mean, like, think about it. Andretti's got some wind tunnels and things already built up for themselves, right? So the only thing they need to really do is build the car, which is one of the most expensive parts of this whole entire sport. And not only build one car, you got to build two cars. Then you got to build spare parts for each car. So if you're gonna build like 3 spare parts for one car, that means you need to build 6 for in total, right? For both cars. And then
Yeah.
on top of it, now you have to manage driver salaries on top of it. And I mean, let's be real. We're getting American drivers into F1 with Andretti, right? There's definitely he's confirmed. There's definitely going to be at least one American driver in F1. I find
Who?
it I find it funny. I don't know who it is. He just
Who?
confirmed the statement that it's going to be an American driver. I don't know who it
Who?
is. You keep asking me who.
Who?
It might just be Logan Sargent again. You never know who
Who?
it could be.
Who? 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 I'm gonna keep asking the question. Who? Who?
I
Who?
don't I
Which
don't
American?
I don't have a name for you at all. I don't know who it could be. It could be Colton Herta. Is Colton Herta an American driver? We never know.
I think he's British. I actually think he's British
Let,
or Australian or something. I don't think he's American.
us go have a look. Colton Herta. Right?
American.
American. So he is.
Where's he racing? Where's he racing?
I don't know where's he racing right now.
Andretti.
IndyCar.
Ah,
For Andretti.
in.
But it's for Andretti.
Yeah. Okay.
So he could be the driver, right? He just needs to make sure he has the points to get that F1 super license. Right?
Yeah, he can get the super. It makes no difference, bro.
Yeah, it really doesn't, but
You know, like okay, I'm not going to be hypercritical. I'm not going to be hypercritical because, you know, that's rude. That's rude because I don't know anything about Colton. I have never watched him race because I don't actually watch IndyCar. I watch a lot of motorsport, but IndyCar is not one of them.
neither do I. I haven't paid any attention into IndyCar at
In all
all.
honesty, I don't watch American racing. That's kind of what it is. I don't watch American racing. I watch if there's racing in Europe, I'm probably going to watch it.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I mean, for me,
Yeah.
I was watching the F1 Academy. That was pretty fun to watch.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere, they were like, "Yes, F1 Academy." I was like, why not? You know, 8 laps of some interesting races there, which was pretty fun to see. Overall, I think that was a great showing. You guys should try. Just give it a try. You know, there's some good racing for what F4 could possibly be. You know, I'm really interested in seeing or those girls get into actually F4.
Yeah,
And-
you know, someone I think who's interesting. She's a McLaren. I think a McLaren Academy prospect
Yes.
is Bianca Bustamanti or something. I can't. I'm butchering your name, and I sincerely apologize. But yeah, I like her. She's relatively quick, and she's also very young. She's 18 years old. She's got a pole under her belt, and I think she has 4 race wins in Formula Academy this year. So yeah, she's an interesting one to watch.
She
Hopefully,
is.
she has another season in F1 Academy to get some extra, comfort, and then she should move across into Formula 4, and then hopefully, maybe she'll be one of those ones that ends up in a more competitive situation, maybe F2 even,
Funny enough,
maybe even.
you mentioned Bianca Bastamanti. She was one of the drivers who was fighting for that position in 8th alongside those 3 cars. That made it quite interesting there, as well as not only does she have some good racing there under her belt, but she also created a little bit of a meme for herself this weekend, because alongside George Russell and a few other F1 drivers, Lewis Hamilton was there, and she gave him the look. So much so that people were like, "Get yourself a girl who looks at you like the way Bianca looks at Lewis." Then I was laughing, and the thing is, she's a good sport about it. She even knows about the joke, and yeah, it's. I think it can be a great thing to see. Something
Hey,
up.
hey, hey.
Yeah,
Hey, man, she's 18 years old and Lewis is 38, bro. There's like a 20-year age gap.
100%.
Lewis, I think Lewis was competing for his F3 or F2 championship at that period of his life.
Yeah, but most likely, dog. I'm not saying Lewis is gonna look anywhere near there, bro. He's just there to support
Yeah.
everyone.
No, no.
But
Hey, I just want to say she's also extremely attractive, but she's quick as well. So, like, yeah, I'm also gonna say that.
that's your
Four
own. That's
podiums and two race wins. 4 podiums and 2 race wins is really competitive, and the fact that she's also got a pole. So yeah,
his talents are really showing right there. But something I would actually talk about that I have disagreements with, right, is this nonsense and rumors of Apple wanting to buy the streaming rights for F1.
let
I
them do it.
I don't like that. I
Let them
don't
do it.
I don't like the fact that Apple are looking to buy it for 2 billion, right? That means
Yeah.
I must now go and integrate myself into the Apple ecosystem. I'm good, bro. I don't want to
No,
be
you
there.
don't have to integrate yourself into the Apple ecosystem. Just get Apple TV. You can get the app on your phone,
Uh,
and it's
bro,
you like anyone, even if you have a Samsung, download the Apple TV app, and that's it. Simple as that, bro.
I'm already paying for the F1
And
TV.
here's the thing. Apple is going to be expanding the amount of sports that they have on their platform.
It's,
So for me, it's one of those things where you're like, yo, if I can just get an Apple subscription and now I have access to like not just F1, I have access to football, I have access to like NFL, I have access to all of these different sports. It makes so much more sense to have an Apple subscription. So I don't have a problem with that. I'm very tired of paying for 11 different subscription accounts. It's really frustrating.
bro,
So the less the better.
you see, that's where I'm completely against this. And this is that deal of Apple signing for sole rights is to me anti-consumerism, right? Or not consumerism. Wrong word. It's
Yeah.
anti-monopoly, right? Because now they're trying to monopolize having sole rights to all the sports. And obviously, I don't think they would be able to get sole rights over the NFL or the ice hockey, NHS, and all of the other sports, right? But
NHS is
it's
something else.
yeah, Major League Baseball, MBL, and I don't fuck with it, right? I think that because then all it does is it ends up being of why should they innovate on anything that we have, right? Look at what I've got on F1 TV right now, right? I can go and look at each driver's camera individually, right? I can see the track data. I can see all of that. Apple's just gonna
Mm.
be like, "Alright, cool. We're gonna downgrade you from what you have currently, right? And then I'm gonna be paying twice the amount I'm probably paying right now for Apple TV. I'm not watching half of the content on there.
Oh,
I'm only coming for
no.
F1.
Well,
I,
isn't it like $5 as well? Isn't or
it's
like
like $5. Yeah, it's still $5, but like I'm not using half the rest of the platforms right there, right? That also means something like the multi-viewer TV
here's
application
the thing.
could die.
I'm not using the platforms on the FIA app.
You're not using the F1 app.
Well,
Okay,
I'm also not using all of the stuff. So,
I 100% get it, right? But if you look at for
and more
myself,
importantly, you can do all that data on the F1 website. So it's not a thing. They could put out that data for free and then put the
uh,
streaming on Apple because
did
they could genuinely do that.
I think you committed sacrilege in your sentence right there. You put free plus Apple in the same
Anyway,
sentence. That does not.
not Apple. The FIA. The FIA can put out the data for free.
But you see, that's the thing. Apple's buying the streaming rights for all of this type of content. Do you think Apple's going
Yeah,
to
yeah,
not
streaming
want?
rights. Not the data. Yeah,
Apple
yeah, but
Apple
like
are
lap
greedy
times, all of
fuckers.
that stuff. Come,
I'm against it entirely. I don't think Apple should get it. That is not something I'm interested in
Is this
having.
just an Apple bias? Is this just an Apple bias? That's my question.
Partly, there's partly Apple bias, but at the same time, like I said, I don't want. I like having the option of being like, okay, cool, I'm coming straight to the source. I want to watch it straight from here. I don't want to go buy extra things that I'm not going to use. Like, I don't really have a Netflix subscription because I'm like, oh, there's only one thing I want to watch from Netflix. That's it. You've got a whole arsenal of other
Okay,
shows that I'm not interested in, and I don't
there's
care
a
about the
couple points
stream.
I want to make.
Yeah.
There are a couple points I want to make. The F1 app is actually not even that great. It's not
Oh,
efficient. It's
100%.
not built well. I don't know. I've got the F1 app on my TV and it sucks. Um, so I would be more happy to give it to a company that understands and knows how to do streaming better, and Apple knows how to do streaming. So in my opinion, I just think they're a better option. I get it. People don't want to have to conform and move or whatever, but if someone is better at doing something, and FIA have proven that they're not really that good at it.
Oh, 100%. They
On top of
definitely
that, also race direction. Like, I don't know if when you're watching the races, you also get the sense that whoever's in charge of race direction is just doing a terrible job. I feel like Apple do a better job at that because I've seen them do a better job at that.
see. That's not going to be something that's up to Apple because remember, they have that race direction team on track, on site. Those directors who are choosing where to look at and what cameras to be on, and that is all done on site there. I don't think Apple's going to get involved in that. This is broadcasting rights as it stands. So it's just more that Apple's gonna get streamed all of the data, and now it's a thing of if you're living like in South Africa, I can't go onto DSTV now to go watch the race. You know, I have to now go get an Apple subscription to watch F1 because they're gonna own global rights, right? You can't go to your Sky Sports subscription now because now that gets invalidated because Apple owns the streaming rights to it. Right now you gotta go swap over to that. That means Sky Sports really gets hurt overall because Apple's just decided now we want to take over all of that streaming rights. I don't think that 2 billion per year could be a very nice thing that the teams someone as greedy as those F1 teams they probably want that money. But I think in terms of viewer engagement, I think it's not going to be that great. I mean, we're looking at if you look overall at streaming platforms even now, right? A lot of them are seeing a decline in
Yeah,
viewership
100%.
to begin with, right? People don't want to be paying for so many subscriptions already, and now you must move over because one company's decided they want to take over all of it.
And
That's just
I've already answered the question. I already answered the question for you because Apple wants to get more into the streaming of multiple sports. So it makes more sense to have the one Apple subscription and have access to multiple sports. Just I'm this is devil's advocate in all honesty.
no, I agree, but if I look at it, I could do the same for YouTube, right? YouTube's got a new platform called YouTube TV, where it's already got all those sports, right? All you gotta do is pay for YouTube Premium, and you get access to the sports. You want to watch basketball? It's there. You want to watch some NFL? It's there. You want to watch the ice hockey games? It's there, right? So
Hmm.
I don't know. I'm just there like I only watch one real sport. I think it's just overall just a bad move. What I think if they want to do right is the rather that give Apple do the same thing that where a share of the broadcasting rights, right? Don't give them sole global rights to it, right? Because then it's just like Apple's just monopolized F1 entirely for itself and its revenue. But that's just where I think Apple might not be Might not be the thing, but we'll see what the FIA decide. You know, they're money hungry guys to begin with. So
Okay, for context, this is where I completely disagree with you. For context, this is where I completely disagree with you.
yeah,
So they think about how many Apple devices there are on the world. Every single one of those Apple devices has Apple TV on it. Even if 20% of those people convert over to Apple device or to Apple TV users in order to watch F1, that's millions of more people that would be watching F1 that weren't watching before, which is more people watching, which is potentially more commercial investment, which means more people, again, more people will be watching.
uh,
I think it's a better move than forcing people to download an F1 app.
oh no,
Like people like you who have picked a sport and decided that yes, I like F1. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
Whereas if it's on a platform that allows multiple people to be able to, oh, I could just watch a race. Let's see how this, you have way more potential of getting more customers through that process. So I disagree with you,
where I
because if we want F1 to expand, ultimately what we want more people to be watching the sport. The
100%.
best way to do that is to get it in front of more people, and the best way to do that is to let Apple do it.
I think this is like I said, uh, Apple can get some rights to stream it, but not sole global rights overall, right? That that like I said, it kills off essentially the competition because then what's preventing Apple from being like, oh, we're just gonna slap on one stream, that's it, right? You get no other benefits, right? I won't lie. F1 TV is by far not the greatest freaking experience you could possibly have, right? It's an application you have to learn on your own just to figure out the data there. But I think it's in terms of the Apple devices globally, Samsung's got a big market share in the East, right? So your main Apple's gonna focus on grabbing a lot more Western. It's not like it Apple doesn't have a presence in the East, right? Apple has a presence globally. There's a reason why they $1 trillion company to begin with, right? But once again, I just side with let us have let them have competition and no global rights for everyone. Sure, Apple can bring extra views onto the screen, right? But if you're having a boring ass race 24/7, we need to first fix the regs so that the drivers are closer to each other than to just bring more eyes. But also, I think the fans, us as fans, we're the ones who should be bringing everyone together to come and watch F1. Convince your friends to come and watch F1. I mean, that's how I got into F1, you know? Right? Is I got intrigued by it. So I was like, I made friends with people who are into F1 and asked them questions about it. Right? If you're a solo viewer, you're gonna come to F1. You're on your Apple device. You're gonna go click on F1. You're gonna hear the terms DRS, ERS is getting used. These on the soft, medium, and hard tire compounds. There's a lot to take in. But I mean, that's one of the parts of why the late breakers are here. You ladies and gentlemen can come join us on the stream, where we all talk everything F1. You don't have to be alone in watching F1. We can have a great big community where we all come together to watch F1 consistently with each other and
Yes.
just have a good laugh.
With the help of Apple.
With the help of Apple from Nash, as he says.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think with the help of Twitch, we can all communicate to each other, which is where you can find us on late_breakers on Twitch TV, as well as our YouTube channel, where you're probably watching this podcast right now. But I think that's going to conclude episode 6 of the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. We will see you guys in the podcast. We'll see you next week Monday or next week Wednesday when the episode releases. But we will also see you. You can catch us on the stream for the Mexican Grand Prix on Saturday or whatever time qualifying starts in your area, as well as for the race day, the Mexican Grand Prix, which is gonna be lovely. But that's gonna be all from me, and cheers.
Cheers.